Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge. Hope you're all doing very well this afternoon. Actually, it's not this afternoon, it's this evening as we talk about Dan Ashworth's dream Manchester United signings, his top 4 signings, I suppose. And I'm just checking if we're actually live here because something seems to be wrong in the system. So I'll keep talking until I can see that we're actually live on the screen because I can't see myself on the screen. Why are we having problems like this then? Am I there? Hello? Hello? I am. Great. Good stuff. Okay, so Ten Hag's, no. Dan Ashworth's top first. I'll start again. I've been in the Goldbridge Arms. If you know, you know. You know what's been going on today. Taking the piss, Mark, says Hassan. Okay, this video tonight is going to be about Dan Ashworth's first 5 signings at Manchester United. We're going to give the update on what's happening. There's been some developing stories around it. But what are most likely to be the 5 signings that he makes first at Manchester United? Because I can tell you, some people are barking up the very wrong tree whilst I sit on that tree going, eating the apple, going, I told you so. There's some very obvious things that are going to happen. And also, there's some very good news for some players that you thought were going to leave. Because Dan Ashworth has already hinted at what players will be leaving United and staying, and also what players will be bringing in. You just need to do your bloody homework. And thankfully, Goldbridge has done it for you. I've done your homework. You can have the night off and just listen. So lots to get into in relation to that. One player I'd certainly mention is a holding midfielder. And if you can guess the name, I'll shout it out for you because it's bloody obvious and they don't play in the Premier League. But we're also going to give you the latest of what's going on as well. There's been numerous updates about when this deal will get done, how quickly he'll start in the job, will there be gardening leave, lots and lots to get into. But before we get into all of that, don't forget our sponsor tonight is Manscaped, and they've got a Valentine's Day, well, performance package for you, the 5.0. What is in the 5.0? Well, you've got the lawnmower, trim the grass to make the yard look bigger. Basically, yeah, trim down there and everything will look a lot bigger. If you know, you know. And also, you get the weed whacker in there, which is a nose hair trimmer that completes your grooming routine. They've also got their liquid formulations to enhance your grooming experience, free gifts like the Shed travel bag and the boxer shorts, and also a refined cologne, a cologne to add a romantic touch to your grooming, and a beard hedger pro kit. So check that out with Manscaped. Scan the QR code or go through the link in the description. 20% off plus free worldwide shipping with the code TUS. And you can join 10 million men worldwide, including me, who are elevating their grooming game with Manscaped. Check it out. They've also got other things. I literally had a shave this morning with this one. The beard trimmer, 11 different lengths on it. Lovely stuff. And I tidied it up with the handyman. So you could go completely clean, but I just use the handyman to go around the edges. That's just what I do. Sue me. Big shout out to Manscaped. As I said, 20% off and free worldwide shipping by using the code TUS, scanning that QR code or going through the link in the description. So big shout out to them. Mark, are you celebrating Valentine's tonight? Says Melps. Only with you lots. There's a lot of love. This is my Valentine's night with you. United are finally being resurrected. The sleeping giant has been awakened. Comments like that, delicate official, terrify me. There's lots of positivity tonight, and we're going to delve into, what signings we think Ashworth will make and what players we think he'll get rid of, because there's a lot of hints that you can look at. And I'll give you the very latest up-to-date news on Dan Ashworth coming to United. But I do worry about United are back. We're resurrected. The sleeping giants have been awakened. We're walking in like a boss. I do worry about that because you're too easy to please. It's like being on Valentine's Day night and you're saying, take me to bed when I've only just turned up at the door. We've not even had a meal or a chat yet. You're too easy. Don't be easy. You've got to be hard to please. You've got to fight for it. And this is just the start. Barada and Dan Ashworth don't mean Man United are back. Far from it. You're going to be very disappointed if you think we're fighting for a title next year just because we've got Dan Ashworth and Barada. This is 10 years of failure. If you think it's going to turn around in 2 weeks, you're having a laugh, And also, you've got to scrutinise every decision. Sir Jim may well be doing a good job. He's still a minority shareholder. The Glazers still own this football club. So, have some bloody morals about you and stop being a lapdog and actually assess everything that they're doing and be vocal about it. Because I certainly will be. And I know a lot of people will be as well. We're not back. We're not saved. It's the start of a very, very big climb up the mountain, and we need to scrutinise every step because they are still owned by the Glazers. But look, as I said before, These things that are happening are completely and utterly logical. They're open goals, and thank God it looks like we've got somebody that wants to come in and score those goals. And just as a little bit of a homework for you, this is a quote from Dan Ashworth in 2022 talking about Sir David Brailsford. I've known Sir Dave for a number of years, working across various different sports, and he is without doubt the best in world sport at creating high performance culture and turning that into winning. That was 2 years ago when Dan Ashworth was at Newcastle, and he got Sir David Brailsford to come to Newcastle and help them out in pre-season. And that is a massive hint as to the admiration that Dan Ashworth has for Sir David Brailsford, who is rebuilding Manchester United with the strategic review. And it's a massive insight, isn't it? Also, before we delve into some of the players that we think Dan Ashworth would be signing in the summer, and there's some of the players he'd be getting rid of, this is the very latest news. So this is coming in from the Daily Mail. Manchester United and Newcastle are expected to reach an agreement over Dan Ashworth's appointment early next week. A rapid conclusion to Dan Ashworth's move to Manchester United is desired by everybody involved. Ashworth wants to join United, and if they can reach an agreement over compensation, things will move quickly. Also, Dan Ashworth would have more control at Manchester United than he's got at Newcastle. There is also the lure of a higher salary, being closer to home, and most of all, being the man tasked with turning United's future around. So look, closer to home, more money, more control, and also turning Manchester United's future around is probably, well, is going to be more valuable, and you're going to get more credit than you are for turning Newcastle into something when they're the richest club in the world, I suppose. Apparently, as well, The Athletic are saying that Dan Ashworth has informed Newcastle that he has been approached by Manchester United in relation to the sporting director position at Old Trafford. Formal talks have not yet taken place with Manchester United and Newcastle, but a formal contract is expected to take place, and it's only a matter of time that happens. The matter is complicated by Ashworth being under contract, and then it makes it likely Manchester United would need to pay a significant compensation to secure his services. And further to that, we're hearing tonight that Manchester United would also be willing to pay more money to stop the gardening leave. So effectively, they would pay more money to get him to start immediately. So there are still things that need to be done. As I said, this could happen really, really quickly. I mean, this could be done by early next week. And look, that to me is the ideal. And I'll tell you for free, we can probably pay Newcastle another 5 or 6 million, and they will let Ashworth start next week. Now, some people might say that's a lot of money, but to have a director of football in place in late February compared to June is worth 5 or 6 million. He'll literally save us. He'll save us that on the first deal. So it's worth doing it. It really, really is. Axel of War says, Valentine's Day, Clarity Bridge. If you know, you know. Cautiously optimistic is the most I'll get at this point. It's been mostly open goals so far. I think that's a great point, Axel. I'm cautiously optimistic about Manchester United, but if we're being honest, they have scored a couple of open goals. Get a director of football in, get a CEO in. Where I will give them massive credit is they've gone and taken Newcastle's director of football, and they've gone and taken one of Man City's most important people. So they're not quite open goals. They're probably, I would say, top corner bin free kicks. But yeah, they've scored, and long may that continue. Darren Walton says, so you're no longer not with Radcliffe. Glazers are still there, full sale only. Think a lot of this community owes Sir Jim an apology. Darren, I don't think we do. I really don't. And hold on a minute, Darren. Why do we own... Have I missed something here? Have we just won the treble? Have we just won the treble and cleared the debt? Have we just rebuilt Old Trafford? Have we just won 5 Premier Leagues in a row? What are we apologising for, Darren? I mean, what is it? Lonely Valentine's night on the bottle? You're talking absolute shit, mate. What are you talking about there? That is nonsense. What I and many other people have done... actually, Darren, just if you are on your own, so am I with my bottle. So nothing wrong with being on your own. And who's, you know... It might be a milk bottle. You might be sucking on that. Mine's not milk. It's just plain water. But no, look, seriously, Darren, I don't know what we're meant to be apologising for, and I don't know what point you're trying to make. Why are we apologising to Sir Jim? Oh, sorry, Sir Jim. I'm really glad you've only bought 25% of the club and kept the Glazers in power. I was wrong all along because you've appointed a CEO and a director of football. God, mate, if your standards are bloody low. your standards are very low if you want us to apologise to Sir Jim. I'm not apologising to Sir Jim. This is not what I wanted. I wanted a full sale. I'll stand by that opinion for as long as you want. I'm not for turning. Most of our fan base might want to turn. I want the Glazers out and I want a full sale. That's not changed. If people have changed their mind, then they're bloody flip-flops. Because it was only about 5 months ago that people were screaming full sale and Glazers out. So I'm not apologising for that. What I have done, and I think what a lot of people have done, and said, I'm a realist. I can't do anything else. I can't change this path we're going on. The Glazers are still here. Sir Jim's bought 25%. We're still in debt. It's not worth my blood pressure or stress levels to get upset about it. We lost. We didn't get a full sale. We lost. I've lost at many things. Man United lost in 2009 in Rome, and I was convinced we'd beat Barcelona. I was bloody gutted, but they were the better team. We lost in 2011 as well. It was at Wembley. I thought, here we go. You know, we lost. What you've got to try and do is hope that Sir Jim's telling the truth, that he actually is going to take United back to the top, because he's our only hope. Help us, Obi-Wan, Sir Jim Radcliffe Kenobi. You're our only hope. That's the situation. I'm not bloody apologising for anything. I think you need to apologise, Darren, for being a Glazer-in supporter. I'm glad there's some structure coming to this club. Hopefully it pays off, says Cohen. Thank you very much to that. And I've been rattled by Darren. We've been neglected for so long that it feels like feels good to get some attention, says Andrew. And how do you get rid of the grass on your bag, says Ryan, Manscaped. Thank you very much. Okay, look, I think at the end of the day, you know, it's that positivity, isn't it? And what I will tell you is, Darren might like this. He'll be getting his rock off to this, because I was speaking to a Liverpool fan today who always takes the piss out of us, and they said, to be honest, your director of football is the right one and your CEO is the right one. And I said, thanks for that. And he said, no, credit where it's due. You're always going to get a CEO and you're always going to get a director of football, but I didn't expect you to go and get Man City's effectively next CEO or Newcastle's director of football. That's really ambitious. Well done. I said, thanks. See you later. So yeah, look, I think that, you know, the quality of the people that we've actually employed is a good thing, without a doubt. I don't know what's going wrong with my. Are we getting many dropped frames tonight or something? I don't know whether my live chat's working at all. And let me know in the chat if you have any problems, because it just seemed to be a little bit unstable. Let me just check. Yeah, we are getting a few, and I don't really understand why that is tonight. Yeah, apologies for that. Evening, mate, says Gabrielle. And right, let me get straight into this, because this is what I wanted to talk about tonight. So we're going to be talking about Sir Jim, not Sir Jim, but I'll tell you what, I feel like just fucking giving up tonight. I don't know what's wrong with my head. It's just all over the place. We're going to talk about Dan Ashworth's first 5 transfers and what they're likely to be, because that's what we're meant to be talking about. I haven't had a drop tonight. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just about to start the new Star Wars movie series. Where is the proper order to watch in your opinion, says Wani? I'm not answering that. Fucking hell. Do people come up with stupid comments on purpose when I'm trying to talk about football? I don't give a shit about Star Wars, mate. Google it. Anyway, let's get on to this. Right, I want to talk about what Sir Jim Ratcliffe... Oh, I've done it again! I'm going home. Bloody hell. What an idiot. Why can't you get his name right? It's not even the same. Sir Jim Radcliffe is not Dan Ashworth. Bloody hell. What's wrong with me tonight? This is rubbish. We're not the biggest United... we're not the biggest Man United fan channel for nothing. I've not had anything to drink, Ronaldo. That would make it even more excusable. I think I've just had a very busy day. Deep pressure. Calm down. Right. We're going to discuss Dan Ashworth's first 5 transfers if and when he's appointed as Manchester United's director of football. And I'm going to give you a name that many of you, and you've not got it yet. No one in the chat has got it yet. So, this player, in my opinion, will be a high priority target for Manchester United that they're going to have to steal from Newcastle, that Dan Ashworth will have identified. And if you know, you know. And if anybody gets it in the chat in the next 5 seconds, I will give them a massive, massive shout out. I'm going to leave you time to do it. But I'm also going to say Scott McTominay is going to benefit from Dan Ashworth coming in as well, because Newcastle have been looking to sign Scott McTominay for the last 2 years. And who is the guy who is in charge of signing players for Newcastle? So you might not have picked up on that one, right away, and you might not agree with it, but Scott McTominay was a high priority signing for Newcastle in relation to their midfield. They were looking to bring him in. So does that mean he's going to stay at Manchester United? It's dropping again. I don't know what's going on tonight. I haven't had this problem for fucking ages. It feels like the bad old days. This feels like the bad old days. I've not had this for ages. I don't know what's going on. I just don't get it. I don't get it. If I'm back, I'm back. Let me know. But I don't know what's going on tonight. I really, really don't. Poor stream status. Let me just check this. Are we back? I think it might go again. It's not Evan Ferguson, no. It's not Evan Ferguson. It's very patchy tonight. It's not my computer, it's the internet. It's very, very patchy tonight. It says it's healthy again now. Well, while it's healthy, get on with the show. You're absolutely correct. So, yeah, I think for Scott McTominay, very, very big positive Dan Ashworth coming in. Now, whether that's because they felt McTominay was a Newcastle player or not, I think for McTominay, this is a really big positive because Dan Ashworth was looking to sign him at Newcastle for the last 2 years. So it could be really important for McTominay that Dan Ashworth comes in. Now, what you think about that is down to you. Do you think McTominay's a player that should be staying at Manchester United? I don't think he's heading anywhere anyway, but I think Dan Ashworth could be really positive for him. But another player that you might not have thought about, a lot of people are saying Palhinha, a lot of people are saying Evan Ferguson, who doesn't play as a midfielder. The midfielder I'm talking about is Ederson at Atalanta. Now, Newcastle, in the January transfer window, tried a lot of different things to get that deal done, and Atalanta wouldn't allow it to happen. So, a very, very, very interesting player to keep an eye on, because Newcastle will go back for him in the summer, and Dan Ashworth was a massive part of them trying to get him and going for him in the summer. Now, it'd be interesting as part of the severance if that player actually comes to Manchester United, or whether as part of the severance he's not allowed to go after targets that Newcastle were looking at, because that has happened before. I can't remember what club it happened with, but it happened where a director of football moved from one club to another, and as part of the severance package, they weren't allowed to go for targets that they'd already identified as targets for the club he was at. So I would keep an eye on that. Now, also, Darren Marco has mentioned Conor Gallagher. So Conor Gallagher at Chelsea, Calvin Phillips, who's now at West Ham, and Ederson at Atalanta were all three players that Dan Ashworth was looking to take into Newcastle. So does that lean towards the fact that they would be players that Manchester United would look at under Dan Ashworth? Yes and no. I think that obviously they're players he likes, but the circumstances of Manchester United will be different to the circumstances at Newcastle. However, what I would say is Newcastle's midfield of Joel Linton, Bruno Guimaraes, and obviously there's a bit, Lewis Miley or Sean Longstaff. They've got good midfielders, and they're trying to be in the Champions League, and they're trying to be a team that fights for top four and potentially titles. So, why would Dan Ashworth change his mind about Ederson at Atalanta or Conor Gallagher at Chelsea? Why would he change his mind about those players when they were players he was looking to bring in at Newcastle? So I'd consider those sort of players as players that he might bring in. I also think Scott McTominay is a player that could be sat there tonight going, this could be really beneficial for me if we do get Dan Ashworth. Certainly, I wouldn't rule that one out as well. Also, I think that I don't think this is a player that I'm sure he was linked to Newcastle as well. Somebody can check this, but I'm sure Todibo has been linked to Newcastle. And obviously he's a player that plays for Nice, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe owns and that Ten Hag likes. I think Chiesa was linked to Chelsea as well. Sorry, linked to Newcastle as well. And I believe he's only got about a year or two left on his contract, so I'd keep an eye on someone like that in relation to wingers. I certainly wouldn't be ruling out Elise or Neto. Neto has been linked to Chelsea. I don't think Elise... Sorry, why do I keep... I'm doing it again. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not Dan Ashworth, and Chelsea ain't fucking Newcastle. Bloody yeah, I definitely need to go to sleep. My mind's just gone tonight. It needs a bloody rewire. Neto has been linked to Newcastle. I don't know whether Elise's been linked to Newcastle, but I certainly think Neto would be a player that would be considered as well. So I'd keep an eye on that one. And I think the big one, I think he's even on the thumbnail, is Evan Ferguson. As the striker, I think there's two names I'd mention early doors in relation to Dan Ashworth. Evan Ferguson at Brighton, who I don't know whether Evan Ferguson would have been on the books of Brighton when Dan Ashworth was there, but let me just double check that. But obviously be very, very expensive to get out of Brighton. I think he's just signed a new contract, hasn't he? And he's only 19 years of age. But Evan Ferguson has been at Brighton since 2021. I don't know, is the honest answer. I don't know. I think Dan Ashworth would have been there, yeah. I think he would have been there, yeah. Answers on the postcard to that one. Was Dan Ashworth part of the recruitment of Evan Ferguson? Whether he was or he wasn't, I think it would be an interesting player, and I certainly think it would be something he would be looking at. Of course, for Manchester United, it would be problematic because of the price, but I certainly think you've got to keep that in mind. And also a player that Newcastle were looking at, and a player that you've mentioned quite a lot, and maybe we'd go for this type of a striker. Jonathan David is a player that Newcastle were looking at as well. They were linked to Garassi. I don't think there was anything in that, but they were quite heavily linked to Jonathan David as well. So there's a few players there. Edison at Atalanta, Jonathan David, Evan Ferguson, Chiesa, Todibo, Conor Gallagher, Neto. I think these are all possible players that we've been linked to already in different levels of, certainty, but also are players that Dan Ashworth's been linked to in his time at Newcastle in the last few weeks. So I'd keep an eye on those types of players, yeah. It's very hard to predict what a director of football is going to do. I think there's some really interesting quotes that I want to bring out about him and what his sort of strategy is. But as I said this morning, I certainly don't think we should be thinking he's just going to buy Brexit. I think Braithwaite, 100%, is a player that would be Branthwaite, sorry, is a player that we would be looking at as well. And I think he's a player that fits the sort of dynamic that that Dan Ashworth would be interested, and potentially an honour at that club as well. Cheers from Prague, says Philippe. My buddy George has his birthday today. He's from a little community called Sabanov and loves United Stand. Can you please shout out him? Thank you very much, Philippe. Sorry for rattling you. It's not a lonely night and I'm not in Glazers Inn. Just think Sir Jim is doing what needs to be done so far. Long may it continue, says Darren. Yeah, but I don't think he deserves a bloody apology, Darren. I mean, bottom line is it's still quite a sensitive topic. I was like probably 95% of this fan base was Glazers out and Full Sail only. So I'm not apologising to anybody for buying 25% of the club. I still think that it's sad that he's had to get in bed with the Glazers to do a deal. And hopefully it will lead to something really positive where he removes them from the club. But it's sad that the Glazers are still here. I'm not gonna say I'm over the moon and jumping for joy about that fact. I just hope that he can achieve something within the parameters of what he's done. Sounds like you're having a date with Gary Neville today, says Mario Franco. And I don't know which players we will sign, but positionally, 2 centre-backs, 2 midfielders, 2 wingers and 1 striker. But can we do 7 signings in one window? It's highly unlikely, says Mojo, the legend. Yeah, I don't think we're going to do that much. I think we will be disappointed in the summer because we always want too much and we never get it. But I will say this. When you look at what we've done with the CEO and when you look at what we're doing with the director of football, there's no reason to think that we're not going to have an amazing summer. I really do. I tweeted it earlier. I think that you look at what we're doing, these are decisions that we've wanted as fans for a long time. And remember, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a fan. He's a lifelong fan. So are you surprised he's getting a good CEO in and a good director of football in? It's what you've been talking about for bloody years. Now, what happens in the summer, hopefully, is what you've been talking about for years. Major removal of players and major recruitment. And I think that this summer transfer window should really be the most impactful summer transfer window we've had in probably 20 years. Somebody's already changed Dan Ashworth's Wikipedia page to say he's working for Manchester United. Was it you, Mark? No, it wasn't me, Cody. And it's got to be Milinkovic-Savic. Looking forward to that happening, says Rory. We need to chill, says Ray Cowley. CEO, Director of Football, all good, but it will still take 3 years to clear the rubbish and bring in the right players. Many are on high wages to clear out, says Ray. Ryan says, stop brain farting, says Ryan. And Juan, if you want to know your Star Wars movie order, you watch Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clowns, Return of the Sith, or Revenge of the Sith. Then you watch Rogue One, then you watch Star Wars, then you watch Empire Strikes Back, then you watch Return of the Jedi, then you watch The Mandalorian, and then you don't watch anything else. Do not watch the latest trilogy. You're better off wiping your arse for 3 hours. Absolute waste of time. Do not watch it. It's absolutely crap. Elliot says, I'll be 18 when I'm in Manchester. Sounds great, mate. And I know we keep talking about getting players, says John, but I'm more interested in the players we need to get rid of. There's 6 or more that need to go. Well, yeah, look, I sort of wanted to touch on that as well. I've given you a few names. I mean, I'd keep an eye on that Edison. He may well still go to Newcastle, but he was a player that Dan Ashworth was really trying to get hold of for Newcastle in January. Now, will he now say that's a player we need to go and get for Manchester United? Because Manchester United were also very interested in him as well. So, you know, that may well be what we look to do. Keep an eye on that. Going back to what was being said about players that need to go. Well, look, I can't even, not on a night like this anyway, but I can't even write this list. I mean, really, if we start from the back, Wan-Bissaka, Rafael Varane, Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof, Scott McTominay, Casemiro, Eriksen, Van der Beek, Sancho, Greenwood, Martial. That's 11 you've got to make a decision on. 11 players that various people in the chat will at least... I think those 11 players wouldn't be on everybody's list, but there are 11 players where you've got to make a decision on. I mean, can you see us getting rid of 11 players? And that's not to mention people like Brandon Williams, and, you know, there's a few others that come to mind as well. So there's a lot of players to get rid of there. As I said, I don't think Scott McTominay's going anywhere. I'd forget about that. I don't think he's going to go. I can't see Lindelof, Varane and Maguire going. I think 2 need to go if we want to bring 2 in. I think Wan-Bissaka will go. I think Eriksen will go because it's obvious. You know, he's only got 1 year left on his contract and he's not part of the first team plans. Obviously, they'll try and get rid of Donny van der Beek. Martial will go. Greenwood and Sancho, you'd expect at least one of those to go. Casemiro, I don't think that's a good idea to let him go. Varane, again, I think you probably have to let him go because of injuries. So there's a lot of players that they've got to make a decision about 100%. But what about Rashford, says Nuke? I can't definitely say he won't go, but I can't see it happening. It depends how big they want to go here. I mean, look, it's a Euros summer as well. It's a Euros summer. And can I just say as well, the Premier League finishes really early this season. I think the last Premier League weekend is the 19th or the 18th of May because the Euros start. But there's a month gap between the 18th of May and the start of the Euros on the 16th. Now, I think the FA Cup final is on the 25th of May, so we could be playing in that. But we're not going to be playing in any of the European finals. So Man United season, if we don't get to the FA Cup final, Man United season finishes on the 18th of May. That's a long, you know, we can't be waiting for the Euros to start. We need to get cracking, which is another reason why we can't wait for the Director of Football to start in June. Because there's 2 weeks in May where you can be doing stuff. So 19th of May, says Linda. So, yeah, look, I think that with the Euros, that makes the summer shorter. But with that early end to the Premier League season, that sort of gives you some time as well. So I think we need to be on it. Do I think we could sell 10 players and buy 10 players? I think it's really difficult to do that. And I don't know that Ten Hag would want that to happen, but it's not impossible that it happens. If you have the right list of players, it's not impossible. I know the likes of Ashworth and Barada only get hired when they know the business plan for the future. It's like what every one of us do when we move on. Surely they would have been sold a vision, which will be backed by funds for them to do the job, says Mojo. Well, I want to read out some comments from Dan Ashworth that he made in recent months and years about recruitment, because I think you'll find it very interesting. Would you bring Rangnick back if you could, says Kenzie. I was asked this morning, no. I think Rangnick told us the problems and we let him go. I think we need to learn from that without Ralph Rangnick. Elliot says, sorry for my first super chat. Must not have seen I'm going in April for Liverpool at Old Trafford. Any recommendations what to do while I'm there, says Elliot. Depends how long you're going to be there, but there's some lovely pubs and places to visit in Manchester and some nice restaurants as well. So get yourself acquainted with that. Does the Glazers still have an 18th month buyout clause for Sir Jim, says Rooney? Well, they do, but I don't think they'll exercise it. Look, our new CEO and director of football are crazy signings and good for the club, but the next step we need is that they all work together with no issues, says James. Yeah, and I think that going back to what Mojo said as well, there will be a vision for Barada and Ashworth to lure them to Manchester United. It won't be just we're Manchester United, here's a good wage. There will be a vision. But as I've said before, Manchester United can raise, I mean, if I was Dan Ashworth, I would say what's your budget in the summer? And Man United would probably say 100 million. And he'd say, forget about it. But then I'd say, but that budget could be 300 million. And he'd say, how? And I'd say, well, look, under financial fair play, you'll know all about it at Newcastle. We can probably only spend £100 million because that's the situation we're in. However, if we remove Mason Greenwood and we remove Sancho and we remove Varane and we remove Maguire and we remove Eriksen and we remove Donny van der Beek and Anthony Martial and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, from transfer fees and saved wages, we will be up around 250 million to spend on players and a big chunk of wages to spend on players as well. So that's the challenge. I did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, and I actually think that going in there as a director of football, your hardest job is going to be having a list of players that you actually want to buy, because there is so much leeway for a new director of football to come in and, you know, really do some impactful things. And I certainly think that United will look at that, and a director of football will look at that as well and say, you know what, I can make some real impact here. Certainly. Now, I know Beth went through some of this afternoon, but you might not have seen that video. So I just want to read some of these comments from Dan Ashworth when he was on the Coach's Voice. He said when he was at England, he decided to invest more in the youth team. So we added more teams to the programme. We put a great deal of resource into coaching, the identification of talent, and then the management when they were with us. But I'm not really interested in that or England's World Cup campaign, because he was working with Southgate. What I'm interested in is what he did at Brighton. And he said, look, on his role at Brighton, my role was to oversee the football side of the club and connect the different departments. I'm at the centre of the wheel when I'm there, connecting the 7 football bubbles at the end of the spokes. We want the academy, recruitment structure, loan planning, medical team, everything set up with first team performance and results in mind. If you don't do that, you're wasting time, effort and resources. So at Brighton, he was about the medical team, the planning of the loans, the recruitment structure and the academy, all fusing in together, which is common sense, but it's not happened at Man United for years. He also said, we value the in-possession qualities of our defenders more than some other clubs, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because this is going to be music to the ears of Erik ten Hag, that at Brighton, Dan Ashworth was saying we value the in-possession qualities of our defenders more than some other clubs might. So whether we're buying a player or training a youngster in the academy, finding a coach or loaning a player out, we think about getting the most from our defenders when they have the ball, which is, exactly what Erik ten Hag will want to do. On his transfer philosophy at Brighton, he said, we have to look at younger players or players from areas that are less fashionable or harder to get to. We're always looking for value for money. And that is why, of course, when he was at Brighton, they were recruiting these players that people were like, where have they found them from? What is that all about? And I think it's probably not the same strategy he would have at Newcastle, and I don't think it would be the same strategy he'll have at Manchester United. But that sort of experience is really important. And, when you talk about Paul Mitchell and you talk about Dan Ashworth, I'll put my hands up. I know what Paul Mitchell's recruitment was like at Southampton and Spurs and Monaco and Leipzig. but I don't know what his involvement was in the style of football, you know, the structure of the football club, etc. But with Dan Ashworth, it's been known for a long time because of the work that he did at England, that when he went from England to Brighton and to Newcastle, he's very much top to bottom in relation to the youth, the recruitment, the style of football, and the medical department all being fused together, and also about being innovative in your recruitment, that you're not sticking your rod in the pond where Liverpool or Tottenham or anybody else is, because you know, as Brighton, even if you've got the money, you're not going to be able to compete with Liverpool or Tottenham in relation to name. So you have to go and get the Casidos. You have to go and get the Mitomas from Japan. But look how successful that's been. And some might say, well, you know, maybe he can't recruit good players then. But actually, all right, at Brighton, Mitoma, Casido, you know, unknown players from areas that people aren't looking at come into the Premier League and do very, very well. But then at Newcastle, you take that mentality, but then you utilise the fact that you're a club that can go and get Isaac from Spain ahead of anybody else and take a punt on a player. You can go and get a Gordon from Everton that Chelsea were trying to get, but you get. So I think it's really interesting because I think you learn a lot at the bottom that you can take on your way through. I'm really interested to see if we can get him, and I think we will. And then when we've got him, I'm really interested to see what his recruitment strategy is going to be. As long as he doesn't try and get Southgate in as as Man United manager, I'm fine. Or Potter. Mojo's gifted 20 memberships, by the way. Absolute legend. And James says, hi, Mark. Is your new pub opening in Dublin? And how do you think Jim will do in 12 months? I did a video about this, didn't I? Last week, I actually said, where will Man United be in 12 months? And I think next season, we've got to be looking to be firmly in the top four and into the latter stages of whatever European competition we're in, because it's embarrassing being out before Christmas, and continuing our form in one of the domestic cups. I mean, last season we got to 2 domestic cup finals. This year, obviously, we crashed out of the Carabao Cup, but I think we've got a great chance of going deep in the FA Cup, and I think that's something that Ten Hag would look to do. I think anybody that thinks next season is about the title is an absolute prat, and they're the people that worry me in this fan base, the ones that sort of run ahead with positivity. They're the same people who start getting overly excited when we sign a player and start saying Ed Woodward's redeemed himself. They're the same people who start going Murta madness. You know, as much as Sir Jim's on trial, and as much as, you know, we're going to be analysing a lot of stuff over the next few years, I think as a fan base we need to analyse ourselves as well. We've been overexcited and giddy for 10 years about a lot of things that have backfired, and I don't think the people that are going we're back, or, you know, this, that and the other, they're the same people that were going Murta madness, Ed Woodward walking in like a boss. You know, there was a lot of people last summer who were trying to tell us that Manchester United have finally got their house in order. Now that Woodward's gone, Murta's working really well with Arnold, and it's going really, really well. And it wasn't going really, really well, was it? So there's been many false dawns, but if I'm being completely honest, I've got no problem with people getting overexcited about Ineos and Sir Jim and the CEO and the Director of Football, but I actually think those people could be quite harmful, because when it doesn't happen straight away, they might flip and start getting impatient. And I think patience is so important. It's the same principle on Ten Hag. You know, the people who want Ten Hag out, oh, we need to change it. We don't need to change it. We actually need to be patient and reinvent the wheel. What have we done under the Glazers for the last 10 years? Brought a manager in, given them money, second summer, don't give them as much, and then sack them. We've done that 3 or 4 times. And Ten Hag is approaching that let's sack him stage. I understand why some fans want to sack him, because they're indoctrinated into the cycle. But what I want to see Ineos do is different things. Oh, we've gone and got a CEO who knows what he's on about football. That's different. Oh, we're going to go on and get a director of football that's one of the best in England. That's different. Oh, we're not going to sack a manager and we're going to back him and give him some structure. That's different. So I'm liking the difference that Ineos are making, because they're making different types of decisions. But we ain't going to solve this in a year. We're not going to solve this in a year. Man City are still going to have Pep Guardiola next season, and they're still going to be miles better than us. Liverpool are going to change manager, which makes them vulnerable, but they'll still have a better squad than us if we don't have a good summer. Arsenal only need to add a top-class striker, and they're going to be better than us still. So I would still say that we are going to be better next season, but we are at the moment. Where are we? And we're in London, aren't we? We're not in London. Where are Manchester United at the moment in relation to the league title? So we are currently 13 points off the top, which doesn't actually sound that bad. I'm expecting to say 20, but 13 points off the top we are at the moment. I would expect next season we could easily be another 9 points better off, which would put us in a title race. But I think that is scary to think that we could easily have another 9 points, which would put us in a title race, because we're not ready to be in a title race next year. If we're in one, I'll take it. And it's not impossible. I thought it was incredible that Arsenal were in a title race last year, because nobody... You think about 2 years ago, and Arsenal. And if somebody said in that February, next year, you're gonna be top. You're going to take 43 points from 48 in your first 48 points. You're going to challenge for the title. People would have laughed. Arsenal fans would have laughed. So it's not impossible that we could be in a title race next year, but I think it's impractical to to expect it. I personally think that we need to look at it like this and say, next season, look, we haven't been a consistent top 4 team since Sir Alex Ferguson left. We need to be we need to be in the Champions League this year, next year, the year after, and the year after that. Because that'll have a huge difference on our revenue. If you know you're in Champions League football every year, that's a guaranteed 60 to 100 million quid. So that's the first thing. We need to be competing in the Champions League every year. We don't need to see the Champions League in September as a novelty. Oh, we're in the Champions League. Oh, listen to the music. Yay. No, we need to be in it every year. So that's a step forward. People talk about titles and winning the Champions League. We need to be in the bloody Champions League every year for a start. People talk about winning the title. We need to be in a bloody title race first. We've never genuinely been in a title race. We came second twice. We were never in a bloody title race. We may as well have been mid-table. We were just second. We were just top of the shit. We were nowhere near the title race. So I think that in the next 12 months, it's about building a squad, building a system, and building a consistency that puts us in the equation of not worrying about whether we're going to finish 5th or 6th every year. And that's not easy, because it's very easy to say, you know, we're not about winning titles. We've got to start being consistently in the top 4. But that's harder than you think. Liverpool aren't in the Champions League this year. Anybody can drop out the top 4. Do you think Chelsea are going to be shit forever? Do you think Newcastle are going to stop growing? Do you think Spurs and Villa are going to drop off? You know, that's 4 teams I've mentioned, and I haven't mentioned Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool. So it's a very competitive league, and you've got to be really good to stay in the top 4 every year. And Arsenal seem to be mastering that at the moment. So I look at Arsenal and I think if we could replicate what Arsenal did and start getting in the top 4 consistently, then that's a stepping stone. But there's a lot to be built. There's a lot to be built. And it would be unfair on Barada and Ineos and Dan Ashworth if he comes in to say, yeah, we've got the structure, let's go win the league. I'm a firm believer that if you've had 3 years of damage, it takes 3 years to put it right. You can do it quicker, it can take longer. But I think for every year it's gone wrong, you've got to be saying it could take a year to get it right. You only get one summer transfer window and then you don't get another one for 12 months. So there's a lot of work to do, but we are putting I believe we're putting some of the right things in place. Fabrizio said that Fabrizio said that United's recruitment has approved Elise. I very much doubt that. Kevin, how can United's recruitment approve Elise in February when we haven't even got a director of football? I don't believe that. I don't know what the context of it is. We're scouting Elise. I agree with that. And I think that we may well sign him because the homegrown thing makes him more preferable than someone like Neto, but we won't have agreed to do it. Mojo gifted 20 memberships. He's an absolute legend of the chat, as we all know. Thank you very much for that. Would you sign Alphonso Davies to replace Luke Shaw, to stop giggling? I personally think we should move on. I think Luke Shaw is a great player who we can profit from. Look, I've heard things about Luke Shaw leaving Man United for the last 18 months, and I've always laughed at it. There's been rumours going around that Luke Shaw wants to go back down south for probably about 4 years. I just don't take any notice of it. He's a massive influence on that team. He's a leader in that team. And unless he's going to be injury prone, I wouldn't be removing him. As for Alphonso Davies, he's a very good player, but I honestly don't care. I will say what I think. I think he's a bit of a FIFA player. And what I mean by that is, he's like Malen. Malen's good on FIFA, and Alphonso Davies is good on FIFA. But in real life, I don't actually think he's all that. I think he's good. I don't think he's world class. I think some players do get hyped off FIFA. And I think Alphonso Davies is a FIFA player. You know, he's world class on FIFA. But in real life, I just think he's good. I don't think he's like the best left back in Europe by a long way. One request for the summer. No more one bid a week on players, dragging every transfer out over weeks and weeks and weeks, says Glennie. I can't, you know what? I'm enjoying watching United at the moment. I'm enjoying what's going on. But I can't wait for the summer. I really can't. I think I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be a good one. But, you know, I think we can all agree it's going to be an intriguing one. Feel like this window can't go poorly. 4 or 5 quality options available at each position we need. Ashworth and good sales could put us in great spot, says Nick. The likes of Ashworth and Barada only got hired. Oh, yeah, we've done that from Mojo as well. Well, look, I don't know whether you heard what Harry Maguire had to say this afternoon. He's done an interview with Sky. He said, on Rasmus, we've seen the talent he has, and now it's really clicking for him in front of goal. We always knew what was going to come because he's an exceptional talent. As senior players, you see a young player coming through and he holds himself so well and so mature. People don't realise his age, but he's come in with a big weight on his shoulders to be the main striker. Well, I think, you know, I completely agree with Maguire there. And you know, we were fortunate enough to interview Rasmus last week, weren't we? And, you know, I've got to say I completely agree with Harry. You know, you almost had to check yourself. He was 20 when I spoke to him. He was 21 a few days later. And it's like, he's just so grounded. He's so focused. And, you know, it's perfect for a striker, but it's perfect for what Manchester United need. You know, we need that mentality. I mean, I can't believe the uproar last night. Somebody took me out of context, clipped it up when I was saying about, you know, Neto's been in a long-term relationship, and those sort of things are really important. Sir Alex Ferguson used to do that, you know. Sir Alex Ferguson, Paul Ince mentioned it. Sir Alex Ferguson, when he was buying a player, he wanted to know whether you were in a relationship, what your social life was like, what your home life was like, what your family setup was like. People don't seem to think that that's important, or that in 2024, you know, the woke set don't think you can do that. You've got a real harsh reality coming your way when you apply for a job at McDonald's, because they will check your CV. They will check what your personality's like. They will check if you've been locked up for having a piss. They will check those sort of things. It's called background checks. If you're a doctor or a teacher, you will have quite severe background checks done on you, because they don't want to employ certain types of people who may well have done certain types of things. So I don't know what people think is wrong with doing background checks on footballers, because, of course, you might have a really talented footballer like Ravel Morrison, who was at Manchester United and really should have been one of England's best talents, and wasn't, because he had a lot of problems going on, didn't he? And those sort of things need to be checked out. And look at Gaza. You know, would you sign Gaza in the modern day? You probably would, because he's an amazing talent, but you'd be looking at the alcohol issues and going, you know, in the modern game, that would be a huge red flag for Gascoigne, and you'd be trying to help him with it. So you've got to look at those sort of things. And that's why when you interview someone like Rasmus, or you hear Ten Hag talking about Kobe Mainoo, you think, well, bloody hell, look, by the sounds of it, their personalities are absolutely what you're looking for. And it is really, really important. I don't understand why people don't think that that's important. He also said about the left-sided centre-back situation, it doesn't matter for me. I'm comfortable playing on the left. It's the manager's philosophy, but I'm sure me and Varane can play together, keep clean sheets and win matches together. Well, we need them to. We really do. And he said about Ineos. Ineos have come in. So Jim, I'm sure he's going to have a big positive effect on the club. And me as a player, I want the club to be successful. On Sir Jim Radcliffe, he says, I'm sure he's going to be a big part in helping get this club back to where it should be. And And I'm sure he's got a vision in what he sees and what he wants from this club. And I'm sure he'll move it in the right direction. The way they want to work, the way they see the club and where they are at the moment and where they want to take us. The lads came out of the meeting really impressed with how he spoke. Like I said, it's an exciting time for everyone at the club because he's brought that fresh energy. It's going to be very interesting, isn't it, to see, you know, how United and Ineos deal with that. I mean, I think Maguire played really well at the weekend, and I thought he was playing well before his injury. Credit where it's due. I think Varane played very well at the weekend. Credit where it's due. But, you know, those two players, would you keep Varane and Maguire? I don't think you can keep both of them. And I think there's a case to say you need to get rid of both. And the sad thing is I actually quite like both of those players. You know, Maguire's had his difficult times, but I think this season, with the captaincy off him, and he's just got his head down and got on with it, there's not been as much media attention around him, which I think was always quite a problem, you know. He's actually been a lot better this season in his performances. Varane, I think, is our best centre-back, but their age and their wage makes me think, well, I think they're both 31 and they're both on big wages. I mean, Varane's probably on 300k, but Maguire's on 190k. That's a lot of money. 190k for a centre-back is a lot of money. I mean, 300k is a ridiculous amount of money, but they're both on a lot of money and they're both 31. And you think, well, you can't give them new contracts, long contracts, so do you cash in and clear those wages? And they've both got a transfer value this summer. I guarantee you someone will give us 30 million for Maguire, and I guarantee you someone will give us 30 million from Saudi Arabia for Varane. So that's 60 million and $500,000 a week in wages, which is 2 million a month, which is 24 million. 24 million in wages and 50 million in transfer fees. I'd cash in both for Branthwaite and Todibo, if I'm being honest. And it's a shame because I like both players, but they don't really fit. We're building something for the future. I just said that, didn't I? We're not going to win the league next year. We're building for the next 3 years. If you're building for the next 3 years, you probably need to turn your back on 31-year-olds who are coming towards the end of their contracts on big wages. But that's not my decision. This is Dan Ashworth's decision. We might keep both. We might not buy a centre-back. So it will be interesting to see how they play it out. Thanks everyone who's tuned in, by the way. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. They're both 30, Mark. Yeah, but have you done your maths or are you just being literal? Harry Maguire's 31 in March. And Varane is 31 in April. So they're 31. I love it when people are so literal. They're 30. They're 30. They're not 31. I'm talking about the summer. I'm talking about they're here till the summer. I never do anyone's age based on the now. I'm talking about next season. They're both 31 in the summer. So can they be part of the next 3 years plan? Maybe. But maybe not. Glazers are letting Ineos do their thing, says Ray. Well, it's in their interests, aren't they? Isn't it? Last 6 seasons, we finished 4 times in the top 4, says Shahin. It's not enough. You need to do it every year. Martinez will be badly missed for the big games, says Kevin. And Mojo gifted 20 memberships. Apologies for the problem with the stream tonight. It's been fluctuating up and down a lot, and that's obviously very frustrating, but we will sort that out for tomorrow. I don't really understand what that's all about, but we will sort that. I haven't had that for a long time. Gur said it was a great show. I think we got there in the end. You know, I suppose sometimes I'm as human as anybody else. You know, you start thinking the name of Sir Jim Radcliffe is Dan Ashworth. I've done it wrong, yeah. And you start thinking Newcastle or Chelsea. But we settled down after about 20 minutes. It was a bit like a bad start to the season. We settled down by November. You're absolute legends in the chat, of course. If you've not seen my new pub, by the way, check out That's Football. The Goldbridge Arms officially open today, the big reveal. Exciting stuff coming with that and the podcast and That's Football, so get involved over there. I actually did a video today on Player of the Year so far. Not one Man United player in there, which has to change. You know, deservedly. There's no Man United player in the top 5 Player of the Year list in the Premier League. That needs to change. We need to start being in the top 4. We need to start winning more Player of the Months. We need to start winning more Manager of the Month. I'll tell you what, there's an early prediction for you. Eric Ten Hag, Premier League Manager of the Month for February. What do you think? What do you think about that? I was looking at it today. In February, we beat Wolves, West Ham, and Aston Villa. And we've only got Luton and Fulham left in the Premier League. He could win 5 games in the Premier League this month. And if he does, it'll be his 2nd Premier League Manager of the Month award. How the fuck can you sack a manager that wins 2 Premier League Manager of the Month awards? So keep an eye on that. He's won 3 games in February already, and we've got Luton away and Fulham at home left. Great chance to win Manager of the Month for Ten Hag. And I hope he bloody well does, because we need to win these next 2 games. What a turnaround that would be as well. You're absolute legends. I'm exhausted. It's been a very exhausting day. I'd forgotten about all the stuff that had gone on with getting that bloody video out for the Goldbridge Arms. Check it out on That's Football. Don't forget Manscaped, 20% off, free worldwide shipping. Get your gear, trim the grass to make the yard look bigger. And thanks for sticking with me tonight. It pisses me off when things go wrong on the technical side of things, so I can only apologise. I know some of you won't really care, but, you know, thanks for sticking with us, because we had about 13,000 watching at some point, so 6,000, 5,000 people pissed off. Thanks for being loyal. Thanks for being part of the United Stand Ultras, and I'll speak